and its impact on the world, causes and consequences. Globalization is an economic, technological, political, and cultural planetary scale process of increasing communication and interdependence among countries of the world, uniting the markets, societies, and cultures through a series of social, economic, and political transformation they given a global character. Globalization is often identified as a dynamic process produced mainly by societies living under democratic capitalism or liberal democracy, and that have opened their doors to the information revolution, reaching a considerable level of liberalization and democratization in political culture, in their legal and economic national law and international relations. This process originated in Western civilization and that has spread around the world in the last decades of the contemporary age. Second half of the 20th century received its biggest boost with the fall of the communist regimes and the end of the Cold War, and continues in the 21st century. It is characterized in the economy by the integration of local economics into the global market economy, where the means of production and capital movements are set on a global scale. New economy, becoming more important the role of multinational companies and free movement of capital together with the definitive implementation of the consumer society. The law also feeling the effects of globalization is the need to standardize and simplify procedures and national and international regulations in order to improve the conditions of competitiveness and legal certainty. In addition to the universal recognition of the fundamental rights of citizenship, culture is characterized by a process that interrelates local societies and cultures in a global culture, global village. There is about divergence of views on whether it is a phenomenon of Western assimilation or multicultural fusion, as globalization depends on technological advance in human connectivity, transport and telecommunications, facilitating the free movement of people and the spread of ICT and the Internet. In the ideological creeds and collectivist values and traditionalist cause widespread disinterest and are losing ground to individualism of cosmopolitanism of the open society. The traditional media, especially the press, they lose their social influence, fourth power, against the collaborative production of information from the web to the zero, five power. Meanwhile, in politics, governments are losing powers in some areas that are taken by cyber society in a phenomenon that has been called network society. Activism increasingly revolves around social movements and social networks as political parties lose popularity of yesteryear. Has stand the transition to democracy against desperate regions, and public policies include efforts to transition to capitalism in some of the former command economies and the transition from feudalism to capitalism in underdeveloped economies of some countries, all with varying degrees of success. Geopolitically, the war is torn between the unipolarity of the USA superpower and the emergence of new regional powers, international relations, and multilateral and soft power the most widely accepted by the international community become. Civil society also takes center stage in the international debate through international human rights, NGOs that monitor the internal of external activity of a state. In the military conflicts between non-state and transnational in many cases, and organizations and state armies, war of terrorism, war on drugs, etc., arise as the powers that carry out military interventions in the other countries, usually those considered fate at stake, seek to win domestic and world public opinion in forming multinational coalitions and alleging combat any security threat without extensive discussion on the legitimacy of the concept of preventive war and human intervention against the principle of non-intervention and opposition to wars. The passage of negative assessment of this phenomenon on the inclusion of additional attained definitions or to highlight the inclusion of some value judgment may vary according to the ideology of the party. This is because the globalization has aroused great enthusiasm in some sectors, while in others has aroused deep rejection. Anti-globalization also having a clear and moderate positions. Causes and consequences. Causes. Among the causes of the phenomenon and the process of globalization include the new restoration of the war occurred after the end of the Cold War, the acceleration of the pace of economy, liberalization and trade in goods and service, liberalization of capital market that make financial markets and stock exchanges around the world, and the revolution in information and communication, which has connected real time with space after the convergence of advanced technologies. Consequence of globalization. The process of globalization is of the following consequence: cementation, differentiation, and marginalization of individuals, social groups, activities, regions, and countries. Democratic states lose the ability to control the flow of information, communication among citizens with the advent of the Internet. The globalization of organized crime, drug trafficking and weapons, prostitution, globalization of technology, money laundering, violent aggression, and that connect through the Internet pose a serious threat to nation states. Emerging previous states lose power, autonomy, ability to decide for themselves the solution of their problems. Emerging, dehumanizing, elitist, centralist, discriminatory, marginalizing, and social exclusion trends. Market developed as just and jury. Specialization and laundering as success of maximum profit. Super concentration of income and wealth in few hands, making the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. Increasing loss of purchasing power of the population in poor countries. Degradation of working conditions and environment. Degradation of working conditions and environment. Increase in the informal economy and criminal economy of speculative capital. Increasing power of multinational corporations and the media. Fragmentation and weakening of the popular and union organizations. Incessant increase in social migration and urbanization. Emergence and development of standardized, alienated and impoverished cultural values. Fragmentation of production processes, labor markets, political entities and societies. Dissolution of resistance to exploitation that brings the capitalist system. The rise of a global political power in the authority structure of a state in the world. Emergence and development of the group of 7 countries: United States, Canada, Germany, France, Britain, Italy, and Japan, as the supreme body of resolving contradictions between the great dominant powers and the resulting political and economic dominance of this country, the rest of the world.